I literally can't believe it. The Conflict of Interest Commissioner at the Parliament has approved Bob Rae's proposal that while he is a sitting MP, he can also act as a lobbyist, lawyer, and negotiator for various Indian bands against the Ontario government. It's amazing. And joining us now from Ottawa to talk about this is an expert in conflict of interest law and ethics law. He used to be the Chief of Staff for Prime Minister Stephen Harper. He's now in private practice at Fasken Martineau. Guy Giorno, welcome to the show, Guy.
Good evening, Ezra.
Now, this is stunning to me, and I go to you not only as someone who used to be a political insider, but as someone whose expertise since leaving office has been conflict of interest. How can it not be a conflict of interest for a fella sitting in the Parliament to have a side job lobbying the Ontario government? I don't get it, Guy.
Well, because the Conflict of Interest Commissioner was interpreting the conflict law written by members of Parliament, and members of Parliament took great care to ensure they could work side jobs when they wrote their conflict law. That's the primary reason.
Now, I don't mind some side jobs. I like the idea of citizen legislators, a guy who runs a gas station, a guy who's a baker, even a doctor. But this is very intimately connected to Bob Rae's position in power. I mean, he will be sitting in the House of Commons. He will be in confidential briefings and caucuses where issues like Indian affairs and mining are brought up all the time. So this is not truly a side job. It's sort of riveted onto his main job, isn't it?
Well, it is. It is. But again, the commissioner is interpreting the law that was written to permit just this sort of thing. I mean, I think there's no legal conflict here. The code's not being violated. I think the whole idea stinks. I mean, you've got Parliament is deciding, voting on budgets. They're deciding on matters of equalization payments. They're dealing with great matters of importance to the federal-provincial relations. They're going to be looking at amendments to the Indian Act. I don't see why anybody would want to do those things and have a side job which looked at the same matters.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I would imagine representing a bunch of Indian bands in Ontario in basically a mineral rights claim, not a land claim, but a mining claim against, I mean, that would be a full-time job. I don't even know how he could do both things at the same time unless they are actually part of the package. I got a question for you, Guy. Who wrote this law that Commissioner Dawson implemented? I mean, you were the Chief of Staff to the Prime Minister for several years. The Conservatives have been in office for close to 7 years now, more than 7 years. Who wrote this law, and should it be toughened up? Yeah,
well, the answer is it should be toughened up. There are two laws in play. One's a Conflict of Interest Act, which was written by government and applies to ministers and government officials. But the Members of Parliament Code was written by members of Parliament themselves, and they took great care. I mean, the most important thing for the members of Parliament in writing their code was to ensure these people, who are already paid $157,000 a year base salary, they made very clear in the code that they would be able to take second and third jobs.
So when did this happen? I mean, when was this done, and has anyone thought of toughening it up?
There has been a members' code for several years, going through several parliaments. It is amended with frequency, but the act is not toughened at all. The code, excuse me, the code's not been toughened. Basically, it's members of parliament ensuring that they have in the window something which suggests they're committed to conflict of interest reform, but it still allows them to take their $157,000 a year jobs, have second and third jobs on top of it. The only basic restriction on your job is you can't have a second job which involves doing business with the government, selling services to the government, selling typewriters or pencils to the government.
But that's just to the federal government, right? Because Bob Rae will be selling his influence and persuasion to the provincial government of Ontario. So he'll be representing Toronto in the federal parliament and then being lobbying against Toronto for the Indians. I don't even get how he can do that.
Yeah, and remember, these members who are working second and third jobs are going to be getting full-time salaries to represent their constituents. Full-time, like, you know, $157,000 is 3 or 4 or 5 times the salary of many hardworking Canadians. And to tell them that $157,000 is a part-time job, you need a second or third job on top, it's absolutely outrageous.
You know what? I would think that people would want to pounce on this in Parliament, but what I'm picking up from you is it's an I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine, or log rolling. You know, some Conservatives might want to take a shot at Bob Rae, but maybe in the back of their mind they're thinking, if Bob Rae can do that, maybe I can represent someone else too. So I don't want to close off my opportunities. It's good to have a toothless conflict of interest code. Do you think that is in the thinking of some opposition or some Tory and NDP MPs?
I think it's exactly the case. You know, people decry partisanship and say partisanship has actually caused harmed Parliament a lot. But I'll tell you this: it's the issues of the times when all parties and members of all parties are on the same side that the public should be most concerned.
That's right. You know what? I got to tell you, I mean, I'm not a liberal. You know me, Guy. I'm a conservative long time. But if I was a liberal backbencher or any liberal MP or senator, and I heard Bob Rae talking about Indian affairs or mining or taxes or constitution or interprovincial intergovernmental relations, if I heard him talking about any of those things, I would want to say, excuse me, Bob, are you representing the public interest for your riding in Toronto, or are you representing your personal interest as a lawyer lobbyist? I mean, I just wouldn't be able to take him at face value anymore, and I am quite sure he will not start off his speeches saying, I'm representing this client now, or this voter now. Just crazy time. Last 10-second thought to you, Guy.
Well, the surest and the easiest way to clean this up is to change the code so that MPs who get $157,000 a year can't work second and third jobs on top of it.
Guy Giorno from Fasken Martineau, thanks very much for joining us today. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Ezra.